All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for joining us for the PHIND Seminar series. We're really looking forward to hearing from Orestis today. For our next seminars, we'll be hearing from Cindy Tang in September and Christina Curtis in October. So we're looking forward to those as well and hope you'll be able to join us. So our speaker for today is Orestis. Just let me fix my window real quick. Sorry about that. He is the CEO and co-founder of Zeit Medical, a telehealth company that offers at-home monitoring and alert solutions for patients at risk for stroke. Prior to starting Zeit, Orestis was a Stanford Biodesign Innovation Fellow where his team developed the initial idea about at-home stroke detection. Orestis trained as a mechanical engineer at Aristotle University, Greece, earned his PhD in biotechnology and bioengineering at EPFL, Switzerland, and conducted cutting-edge research in flexible wearable electronics with the Bio Group at Stanford Chemical Engineering. He authored more than 20 publications in prestigious journals and has filed for a variety of patents at the intersection of materials technology and medical devices. Orestis currently lives in San Francisco, where he also contributes to the UCSF Stanford Pediatric Device Consortium as a technology advisor. He also maintains close ties with the medtech and health tech communities in Switzerland and Greece, contributing to regional biodesign educational workshops. So really stellar background and really excited to hear about what you've been up to. And please go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Help me understand here. Am I already sharing screen or should I just share screen right now?
Please go ahead and share your screen, yes.
There we go. Does that work?
Yeah, I can see it. Is it in the full screen mode? I'm trying to.
I hope so. I'm not 100% sure. But this, from my side, I see it as a full screen right now. If it's not full screen, let me try it again. View, present.
There we
go.
Perfect. Yeah, right on.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ryan. And first of all, thank you very much for the kind introduction. Thank you very much for the amazing support that the Precision Health and Integrated Diagnostic Center has provided us over the last couple of years. As you mentioned, the initial idea for creating a technology around stroke, improved stroke care, came while me and my co-founder were still at Stanford. And obviously these early grants, just like the one we got from PHIND, have been critical in helping us push forward this technology. So once again, thank you so much. And thank you for also giving me the opportunity to be here today and share with you and the PHIND community the work that we have been doing in that domain. To kick it off, as you said, Zeit Medical has been around for just a couple of years. We're an early stage company, and our focus has been on enabling immediate stroke detection at home. This is a work that I have been practically pushing forward with the help of my great co-founder, who is a physician. He's trained at Stanford, critical care physician, Urs Neighbor, with whom we were together at Stanford Biodesign when we actually started working on this area. I bring in more of the engineering background here, as you mentioned already, and definitely thankful for the amazing technologies that I have been exposed to during the last couple of years during my postdoc at Stanford, especially at the Bio Research Group. Now, the story here begins at Stanford Biodesign. Back in 2017, 2018, I was very lucky to be selected as a fellow. By the way, if any person in the audience is interested in learning more about this program, feel free to reach out. I'm a huge fan of the program, probably life-changing, at least for me. So in a nutshell, what happens during that fellowship is these amazing people over there, they're trying to create these teams that match together engineers and physicians with also people that come from a business background, and they let you loose in the university and the university hospital trying to identify unmet clinical needs and practically stratify them from the perspective of clinical impact you can have with a solution, the business impact that you can have with the solution, trying to pick up in a way the best idea to work on, best for the patients and also from the perspective of healthcare economic value. So also they give you a theme. For us that year, the theme was orthopedics, which of course some of you might wonder now, what does orthopedics have to do with stroke, right? But turns out that you can find these little nuggets of insights in places you least expected. So practically I was with my then co-founder Urs doing some interviews in the Stanford Rehab Center. And we stumbled upon this super sweet patient he had a broken leg and he was getting rehab for that. And he started telling us his story about how he had a stroke. Because of the stroke, he had instability. He was partially disabled, and this is how he had ended up having a broken leg. But then he continued his story, and he started telling us about how things would have been so different for him had it been a couple of hours earlier that he was discovered having a stroke. So practically, he was telling us a story of what is commonly referred to as a wake-up stroke. That person had a stroke during the night, and exactly because it's very difficult to pick up the symptoms, very difficult to understand that the stroke is happening, that specific person had lost multiple hours before 911 was alerted. And this got us thinking into what can we do about this? And actually for both of us, it brought up some memories, because both me and Urs have had family members that actually experienced very similar stories with stroke. So we decided to dive a little bit deeper. And what we realized is that, yes, stroke is a really devastating disease. It's the #1 cause of disability in the US. And it comes with a pretty expensive price tag associated with it, both from the perspective of taking care of these patients in the acute setting, but also on the rehab environment, which also piles up a lot of cost. Now, what we realize is that every year, there is 1 million new strokes or TIAs. And you see here, I'm actually not even speaking about the severe bleeds that also fall under the category of stroke. We started looking into ischemic stroke initially. And practically there is a very big group of people that carry this risk. Particularly, we focused initially on atrial fibrillation patients. And what we saw is that even though over the last couple of decades, we have developed amazing tools to treat these types of strokes, be it with TPA, a clot busting medication, or with thrombectomy, which is an amazing technology that can treat large strokes. What we practically saw is that in general, patients are losing the race against the clock. And by losing the race against the clock, what happens is that the chances of surviving this event, being disability-free, just go down very quickly with time. What we also found out is that the general mantra that time is brain applies, and it applies very well here. Currently, a quarter of patients that have big strokes die because of them. And as you can see here in the numbers, more than half of them will live with some sort of medium to severe disability. By looking at the data, and by the way, this is a very simplified deck. I don't have all the references. Feel free to reach out if you want specific references here. Sorry for that. By the way, what we realized is that if we can really shrink the time that it takes from stroke onset to bringing these patients to treatment within a relatively conservative window of just 4 hours, which would mean that, yes, everybody gets in faster on average, but also everybody gets this option to get TPA, of course, if they're eligible, we could have a massive change in the outcomes here. Not only would decrease the percentage of patients that die because of these events to less than 10%, that's a very big delta, but we could practically triple the number of people that would live independent. And this is kind of what got us thinking, how can we get there? How can we just bring everybody as quickly to the hospital as possible? Because right now, practically just 10% of patients get treatment. And this kind of like sums together the 4% nationwide delivery of TPA, and then the data that we've been seeing around 10% delivery of thrombectomy. And here comes our insight. we looked into what is available out there in terms of technologies, and we realized that most of the work right now done by amazing companies like Viz.ai, Rapid AI, companies like Cerebrotech or Forest devices, these are devices that live in the ambulance. They try to shave off minutes. They can approach the order of hours sometimes, but still the longest delays occur before a 911 call is placed, especially for those scenarios where patients might be asleep or they're alone when the event happens. And this is exactly what we set out to address, kind of make a difference. And in that way, we started thinking of different scenarios of how can we address this. And we realized that there are actually technologies that are used already in clinic to detect the onset of events like this. And specifically, there is a technique called intraoperative neuromonitoring. And during intraoperative neuromonitoring, practically the users are assessed with EEG, which is brainwave monitoring technology, in order to understand whether something bad is happening during the surgery. High-risk surgeries include scenarios like carotid endarterectomies, or balloon test occlusions, or coil placements. And of course, this is a space that one of our advisors and big fans since the beginning, Professor Jaime Lopez, has had great expertise in. So at this point, I also want to thank Jaime for being really supportive since the very beginning. He definitely opened up this world for us. So how does this work? This is an excellent paper by Foreman et al., where they practically explain that there is a direct correlation between the cerebral blood flow, the level of cerebral blood flow, and the wave patterns that present in EEG. Practically, as cerebral blood flow gets diminished because of a stroke, for example, or because of a surgical procedure in the OR, the neurons start complaining because they don't get the necessary oxygen, they don't get the necessary glucose for them to function. And what you see is a gradual silencing. First, you'll have these high frequency firing parts of the brain just silencing down, going into a type of limbo. And then as things progress, and ischemia becomes more severe and blood flow becomes more limited, practically you get up into these very slow waveforms, as they're often referred to. And in the end, when you're approaching cell death, it becomes a flat line. What we did in order to develop a tool here was practically answering the question, how can we emulate the ability of expert neurophysiologists to read the EEG data and make sense out of it and do it practically in an automated way? And we looked into a variety of data sources where EEG had captured the onset of similar types of events, this kind of ischemia-induced slowing. We created a robust pipeline where we identified those regions of data. We had them labeled and relabeled, assessed for the quality of the labeling, and then created a database that was, in a way, uniquely curated so it will enable us to train and test our algorithm. So practically what our basic tool here does is that it reads EEG data, it applies a very specific set of rules and signal processing methods, and then we infer from that output whether this data looks like normal EEG data, or what we call the baseline EEG data of a patient or a user, versus what a stroke might look like. And we've titled that to NeuroCool AI. The characteristics that we are initially going after is this nature of slowing, as I explained earlier. Of course, there's more to it than just losing the high frequencies, as I mentioned already, but it is one of the most critical components in there. So what we've tried to do in order to deploy this at home and help people detect the onset of stroke faster is that we try to make this very simple. So we have this algorithm that we previously developed, and actually we got very good initial performance data. I can speak more about that towards the end of this deck. And with that data, we said, okay, now we need to find a way to collect a similar type of data at home. And we started looking into different technologies, and we saw that there are actually a couple of very interesting hardware solutions already available out there for recording brain electrical activity. And what we've designed is this system where we leverage existing hardware that we pair with our app that contains our algorithm. And all the user has to do, and by user I mean either a person who has had a stroke and is afraid about having another one, or a person who has risk for having a stroke and is afraid about having a stroke. So all they have to do is wear this device when they go to bed, and data is streamed in real time from the sensor to the app, analyzed. And if we detect a stroke, we have the ability to first notify the user themselves that something bad is happening, notify a specific list of pre-specified caregivers. That could be somebody's daughter, somebody's son, or for example, a nurse within a senior living facility. And finally, we can alert 911. And by alerting 911, we can also push a set of enriched information about where is the user when this is happening. What is the rate of change in the data that we're getting? Is this like a severe event that is changing rapidly or not? And this can all reach the EMT personnel by the time they will arrive to pick up that patient. So in terms of our strategy so far, we've hit a couple of very important milestones, despite being a very small team and running this in a very bootstrapped way. So we've already trained and tested our first version of this algorithm. And this algorithm was tested on clinical data where people had stroke in real time. And we reached the point where we could get 0 false positives and up to 89% sensitivity. This means getting practically almost 9 out of 10 of the events without having false positives. And I want to clarify, this is for the intraoperative data. We took this information along with our idea to the FDA at some point last year, and think that we're excited. There is definitely a need in this pre-911 space. And because of that, we got breakthrough designation, which has been a very important milestone for us. Finally, over the last couple of weeks, actually, we just launched a small human factor study where we developed a first version of our research kit. I'm just going to show it very quickly what we have here. So we have a little box that we're sending to people. It contains the headband that we're using right now for testing, and we have been recording some first data from these people. What we're trying to understand from this small study is to see if there is a good fit from the compliance perspective. We want to make sure if people will wear this device every night. We don't want to have a technology that people just use 2 nights and then they just park it. It's important that they use it. And then we're also assessing for overall ease of use. We want to make sure that either people that might have some sort of disability, they still can use our technology. Now we're at the point also that we recently got accepted into Y Combinator, which was also a big thing for us. This program has really accelerated us in terms of where we're going to go in the next couple of months. We have a specific plan to get our technology through FDA clearance, and we're planning a bigger study that is going to be at some point in early 2022. And this is the study that is going to support our filing for getting a claim around detecting stroke. We expect to have a commercial launch on this at some point early 2023. So in terms of our study planning, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but practically, as I said already, we're having already an ongoing small study focused on human factors. We want to make sure that people can use it and they're compliant to it. But of course, at the same time, we're getting some idea of the signals. Is what we're getting something that we can use with our previously trained models? The second step has to do with safety. So we're planning to do a slightly bigger study, probably around 100 people, if I remember very well here. And what we're going to do is we're going to have our final product, the wearable sensor plus our app. We're going to target again people who have had stroke or TIA, and we're going to have everything enabled, the alert. So it's going to be the final app design. Our aim here will be to assess that we don't get false positives in the beginning. And finally, the last step will be this bigger study that I mentioned. We're going to aim for having, a minimum number of events that we will capture within a specific period of time. We're going to target monitoring patients for 90 days period post their event. This is based on our understanding and literature, a period of high risk, practically for everyone who goes through a stroke. And this is going to be the sensitivity specificity data that we will be expected to present to the FDA for FDA clearance. Now, wrapping this up, I want to thank once again, first of all, the Precision Health and Integrated Diagnostic Center for all the support that you've given us along the way. Really appreciate it. And of course, huge thank you to all the other organizations, be it Stanford Biodesign, Stanford SPADA. Literally, the Stanford community has really supported this, and we're really grateful. This is all from me. I tried to keep it short, Ryan. I'm happy to take questions and have a vibrant discussion.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for a really interesting talk. And everyone, please go ahead and if you have questions, either write it in the Q&A or feel free to raise your hand and you can ask directly. And I'll kick us off just to kind of get things going. So I'm curious. So there's multiple conditions that could potentially, trigger some sort of a signal. So is it that the signature of the waveform is just very distinct and that doesn't matter? And I wonder also, does it matter in the placement? It's very impressive that you can get, potentially zero false positives. So I guess the other aspect of that is, maybe it's not such a bad thing if you pick up something like a seizure or something, but I'm just kind of, from a technical aspect, it'd be great to hear from you.
This is a great question, Ryan, and one that has been, in a way, troubling us since the very beginning. We'll speak more about specificity sensitivity balancing here, but reality is that we don't want to send people to the hospital in vain. We don't want to wake up people in the middle of the night and just scare them that they're having a stroke without it being a stroke. Absolutely right. Without going very deep into the mechanics of our models, there is one thing in the nature of stroke that is very useful, and that is that if it starts, unless it is a TIA, it just sticks around and has an effect. So practically, long story short, the more a stroke is happening in front of you, the more sure you are that it is indeed a stroke, right? So, of course, this has specific time limits. You don't want to wait 8 hours before you're sure with your algorithm, but this is practically part of the fine-tuning that we've done. We can get to a very good accuracy very quickly that something is indeed a stroke. Now, in terms of mixing other types of events, we've tested our tools with some of the publicly available databases. For example, the Temple University has a probably widely used database, 4 terabytes plus, and this has been our first kind of test bed. So far, we haven't had any issues in terms of picking up seizures as a stroke. Of course, seizures are within the realm of what we're interested in looking into. Definitely not the first step for us. We're really interested in addressing stroke, and there are a couple of wonderful companies here around us and in the world that are really addressing seizures. We have been exploring what is available out there in terms of tools to potentially integrate it down the road.
Excellent. So we have a question now. It says, about the signal collected by the band, how do you remove the noise associated to dreaming and motion during sleep?
That's a good question. So for the dreaming part, I can't answer yet. But what I can tell you is we have 24-hour round data on users, and what was the biggest concern for us in the beginning was, are we going to mix up sleep like with stroke? And it's something that we haven't had an issue so far, especially with integrating some of the aspects of what I said already about stroke, like the nature of stroke.
Okay, another question is the target user someone who has already had a stroke? Also just wondering how people feel about wearing a headband to bed, any insights yet in terms of compliance?
Yeah, so both great points. So our target first is people who have had a stroke or a TIA already. And the reason is that usually these people are sent home, and from the perspective of stroke, all they have now is stroke awareness, stroke education, improving their understanding. And then they still have to live with this concern that another one might happen. TIAs are often considered also like a first alarm that something else worse might come afterwards. So we're starting there. But we see our technology as an enabler of peace of mind for practically everyone who carries stroke risk and considers themselves as like, you know, scared, like they want to have an extra layer of awareness there. And the second question was about sleeping and whether the compliance is good. Is that correct, Ryan?
That's right.
I can give you two pieces of information here. So I've been trying it a lot myself. Actually, in the very beginning, I was also kind of skeptic, like, are people going to use it? So I started wearing it myself every night. Definitely, there's always issues with sometimes the device slipping off, and we've baked in these safety aspects in the app, like it can notify you if the device is off or if it's slipping off. The big question here is, are people going to wear it in general? And so far from this 15 people study, we've been getting very good feedback. So again, better than I initially expected. And I have to give a huge thank you also to my co-founder Urs for, you know, really staying on top of that study, managing it. Yeah, these users, I think, love what they have in their hands right now.
Excellent. Another question is, how do you select patients at high risk for study and control for their current medications that they may be on to prevent strokes?
Oh, can you repeat that question, Ryan?
Oh, yeah. How do you select patients at high risk for the study and control for their current medications that they may be on to prevent strokes? So if they're already on a medication to maybe, you know, whatever it may be.
Correct. So that is a good point. From a perspective of study design, you could select only the people that maybe are contraindicated for medication. So they have higher risk than everybody else within the group. We are seeing our studies more from the lens of general at-risk population. There's going to be people that have higher risk. There's going to be people that take their DOACs. There's going to be people that don't take it. We're going to practically choose the end of that study so that we have enough power to have the specific number of events that the FDA will ask us in order to show our sensitivity and specificity data.
Okay, excellent. And then another question, I guess, in terms of the types of patients that you had in terms of their age. Are you mostly looking at elderly patients? Are there younger people? Kind of, can you speak to kind of the age groups that you're considering or currently including?
That's a good question, and I wish I could go back and calculate that median on the age group of these 15 people. I think it is mostly on the older population, probably 50 plus. But again, I would have to go back and check that.
Sure. Let's see.
We do know that there are younger people who also have risk, and there is nothing limiting what we're building to users of one age group or the other.
Excellent. Let's see. Any plans to extend this technology to awake ambulatory patients, or is the technology or the challenges too great, you know, for like sufficient signal to noise? Is the market there for such an application?
That's a great point. Actually, most of the people that we're speaking to right now are asking us, hey, can I wear it during the day too? Very reasonable ask, right? The answer is yes. There is, again, nothing limiting it. definitely the noise sources during the day are at one notch higher than during the night that you're sleeping. Of course, there's no noise sources there. But I think that as we take our next steps, probably we're going to first try to address the issue of being alone. So first, we're addressing your sleep, and it's very hard to detect a stroke happening. Then you're alone, and it's hard to detect a stroke happening. And then once we're there, most probably we're going to start exploring other more passive methods of also monitoring these people. The brainwave monitoring is a straightforward approach. It's like a window to the brain, and it can help us make this first step. I think we're looking into more passive methods down the road.
Sure. And is the risk for strokes higher during the night, or is it also, is it the same during the day, or how does that work?
That is a good question. And if the person who's asking has some insight, I'm more than happy to continue the discussion offline. Our understanding is that there might be some biochemical reasons that cause strokes during the night. We are treating this as a uniform distribution right now. Night is a third of the 24 hours, so practically we expect that 20 to 30% of strokes will happen at night.
Okay, excellent. We have a question. What is the false positive rate? Now, you said I think you can set the threshold so you don't have any, but maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yes, no, this is a good point. Yes, for the model that we reported to the FDA and we got a breakthrough, we presented a zero false positive rate, and in a way that was by decision. So we tuned our tools to optimize for zero false positives, and then we try to see how good of a sensitivity can we get, which is what I mentioned earlier. Of course, there might be scenarios where we can compromise. So I'll give you an example. If we decide to bring our technology back into the OR and practically help the neurophysiologists that are doing this already by adding an extra layer of automation there, where instead of having to, and I know that they use multiple modalities, but when it comes to the EEG, you have to observe real-time EEG data flying in front of you. We are looking into ways of practically adding something on top of that, where we can really point the user's attention to where we think badness is happening in the EEG. And for that, maybe tuning the false positive rate might be acceptable. Like maybe you can accept one false positive attention point during the span of the surgery. So these are things that we can do.
Okay, let's see. Another question is, can you talk a bit more about the sensor, how many electrodes and the battery life?
Yeah, so we are, as I said already, we're currently working with what is existing. We want to practically turn our thing into a hardware agnostic technology. So we have our algorithms, we're expanding them and making them better and better. The battery life that we're looking for is something that covers the average night's sleep. So we're looking at something that is like 8 hours plus. The 2-3 systems that we have been exploring fit that category. So we don't have as much issues on that front. Yes, there might be people who sleep more than that on average, and this is some feedback that we're definitely taking into consideration while looking into the future. So if we ever had to go build our own hardware, definitely there's going to be a lot of input that we're going to take into account.
Absolutely. And one of the questions is not as scientific, but they're wondering what kind of the price point of this might be.
Good point too. So as you might have guessed from the discussion, although I didn't spend so much time on that, we are looking into initially offering this as a direct-to-consumer path. Might still require prescription. This is something that we have to definitely do some discovery there. But for that path, we've been doing some extensive research on the background, trying to understand what are people willing to, value like this kind of service. So right now we're looking at a subscription model. We think that we can offer this at $35 a month. And this would cover practically the idea of offering this system that they wear every month. They wear every day, that they pay per month. It's very similar to other technologies that you might have seen out there, like Whoop or the Halo band that is offered by Amazon. So very similar subscription-based model.
I'm almost kind of along the same lines. I'm just wondering, Is this type of monitoring reimbursable? Is there like a CPT code or anything that exists for this?
So to our understanding, there are CPT codes for reimbursing brain electrical activity monitoring, EEG monitoring at home. It comes in different flavors. You might have also video monitoring, depending on where you are in clinic, at home. These are, I would consider those lucrative reimbursement codes. There is also a CPT code that is more generic about remote patient monitoring that potentially could still fit along our financial modeling here. Definitely some work on our end in terms of figuring out exactly what we want to go after. What I think is just important to say is that we really feel passionate about exploring more this first step B2C strategy, because we think that this will generate actual real world evidence that we can use as an argument when we're going to go and persuade the people who will have to persuade about reimbursing this technology. So yeah.
That's great. So it sounds like there's a lot of potential there. So that's exciting as well. Yeah, so I have another question. I guess I'm thinking about, maybe a couple of years back, and when you originally proposed something to PHIND, I think you're thinking of something more implantable.
Yeah.
And as a biodesign fellow, I'm sure you iterated multiple times to come to this, where it's a little bit quicker deploying into and things like that. I wonder, looking into the future, if you were to go that direction at some point, what other capabilities would you be able to include having if it was a form factor that was implantable as opposed to wearable?
Yeah. This is a great question, right? So yes, when we were still biodesign fellows and we identified this unmet need, which is detect a method or a way to detect early the onset of stroke in patients who are at risk to improve outcomes. That was our need statement, kind of the most important thing while you're doing the biodesign program. And when we laid out our thoughts about the nice to haves and must haves of the solution around this, actually on the very, very top was compliance. Like strokes can happen anytime, anywhere. So why don't we make a solution that monitors people anytime, anywhere? And this primary must-have there is what kind of led us down the rabbit hole, in a way, of thinking, okay, an implantable solution does offer 100% compliance and definitely monitors you 24/7. We worked on this idea from the perspective of making something that is minimally invasive, similar to what a implantable loop recorder might look like. I don't know if the audience is familiar with the technology, but practically we're speaking about a small implant, sits on the chest, just under the skin, and it monitors EKG. So we said, okay, why don't we make exactly the same thing, but for the head? And we spent quite some time and effort on that. I think still that it's a great idea. It's just that what we realized along the path is that maybe not everybody is open to the idea of having something just under their skin on the head, especially given that we wanted to deploy some thin, flexible electrodes also. We want to have good coverage on the head. So while working on that, we realized that we can already make a good dent if we even solve just part of the problem in the beginning. This was, yes, it took time, but we reached that conclusion. Nighttime strokes or wake-up strokes definitely is a big part of the pain that we see right now in this space. It's just very difficult. Sometimes I say that you might have one of the, a very good stroke neurologist sitting next to you, but if you're sleeping, it's just hard. And I don't know, maybe things have changed and it's even possible just by symptoms, but our understanding from literature and what we've seen is that it's just very hard based on the symptoms.
Yeah, I think it definitely can be. People go, unless it's blatantly obvious, sometimes people aren't even sure what's going on. So having this is really useful. And it's really great to hear about the journey as well. How you come from the idea to doing kind of like, design thinking to, all this is great to hear.
It's definitely not linear. It's really a very big zigzag.
Listen, you have another question is the current product designed for live alerts only, or is there data storage with post-event review?
That is a good point. And this hinges upon a bit on what can we do to make our tools better, in a way. So right now we're focusing on streaming real-time the data. The steps we're following is first version of what we're building, everything is going to be analyzed on the cloud, and practically we're sending back, we push alerts if something is detected. Next step on our kind of pipeline is to push everything within the phone, and I think that what we have been developing is relatively lightweight in terms of analysis, so we can definitely execute what we need to execute within the phone. And yes, down the road, if we decide to take a path where we build our own wearable hardware, we can push everything on the edge, so have everything be embedded in the device. Now, for the thing that I mentioned earlier, currently what we're at least exploring is the ability to flag the specific areas or periods of data that are associated with flags that are stroke-like, and then maintain only that information. We don't want to save all EEG that is coming in from people, but I think it would be great if we can just store that part of the data so that we can finally tune our algorithms down the road. So this is going to be great for us.
Excellent. Any other questions for our speaker? Okay, well, we had a lot of really great discussion and a lot of interesting questions that come through. You know, I think it's always exciting to see something that goes from an idea to actually having kind of, you know, a prototype, and now you're actually getting ready to deploy it. So very, very exciting, I think, for PHIND, especially to see things go from, from a workbench or even in your head to actually getting in people's hands and being able to have impact to the community. So really commend you for that and really appreciate all your efforts.
Yeah, I just want to say that for us, and I take it as an advice maybe, but for us, one of the biggest and most important realizations along this path, that as we said, it wasn't linear, is that in the current environment, it's just so much faster to iterate on products that are software heavy. So because it's easy to test things out, you can iterate, can change things, improve things, of course, always in compliance with the good practices of building software that will be medical device. And of course, if you can find partners that build hardware that fits your needs, it's just a great path to explore. Like, I would suggest it every day to everybody, unless you have very specific strategic reasons not to do that. Try to find collaborators. It just accelerates the process. And in the end, it's the benefit, the patients will benefit, right? It's going to get it to them faster.
Yeah, I think, I think the thing that's nice what you're doing is it's very impactful and can get in people's hands. And yeah, the collaborative spirit will help it be even more impactful. So I think all that's really great. Well, thanks so much for sharing all your insights today and your progress. And we wish you all the best and look forward to seeing this on the shelves soon.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed. As I said, being at the YC has been a real push for us, and hopefully I can sit here maybe a year from now and tell you how all our studies are going great, and we're now one step closer to getting to that FDA clearance.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have you back again. So thanks so much.
That is awesome. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you very much, everybody on the panel and the audience. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Have a great day, everybody.